No comment? You know, if you go there, I'll come visit you with my family. So do you have any questions, any comments before we go home? We only have Monique, go ahead. Probably nothing. Maybe that's best. Anyone else? Monique, go ahead. Where are you going?
I don't have anything to say.
Oh, you've been homeless for like a week. And yeah, you're homeless. Yeah, you're homeless.
I'm choosing. I could go back there anytime. I'm just preparing.
A case went before the Supreme Court some years ago about the cigarette companies, the tobacco companies. This is a time where they would actually still have the power to advertise themselves in like Safeway, Whole Foods. And you're dealing with a company that's in the business of killing people. And the problem with an industry that kills people, if you continue killing people, you'll have no customers. So you're dealing with a company that kills people at the same time and needs to create customers. But you can't create customers if you don't make them addicted. And you can't make them addicted if the way you produce your product doesn't create addiction. So as they keep putting the stuff in tobacco to make people addicted to smoking quickly, the prosecutor looked at the 9 jurors and asked, is really freedom worth allowing this company to kill people and then make people addicted and then have these people suffer awful diseases like cancer? Why not just not advertise? And once you don't advertise, you don't create desires. And if the desires aren't there, the company will go bankrupt. Especially in a system such as this where nobody has healthcare. And if they do, they really won't cover the pain you get from smoking tobacco. And that's one of the problems with freedom. Is freedom worth becoming homeless? Is freedom worth getting cancer? Is freedom worth being stupid? Any questions? Anyone before we go home?
Federer, Novak, oh.
I'm sorry?
Federer, Novak, or Nadal.
Oh, Federer. He's like silk. I have never ever seen anyone. I used to play tennis and I want to be a tennis pro.
That's why I asked.
So you're saying the reason they become homeless
Because what?
because they feel unworthy?
I'm sorry, what are we doing?
I was listening to what you were saying.
About Federer?
No.
Can we just finish Federer real quick?
I don't.
Roger Federer. No other person you need to watch, just Federer. Just the way he, I'm sorry?
Did you do a one-hand backhand too then?
I did too, because in my time, we all worshipped the Iceman, Bjorn Borg. He was cool. I mean, if I was a woman, I would probably sleep with him. I would probably sleep with him now too. Yeah, but Federer, he was amazing. Just everything about him. You know, once in a while, life creates magic. You have like a freak all of a sudden walking into like a profession like Magnus Carlsen or Bjorn Borg or Muhammad Ali. I mean, you should sit back and watch some of the interviews that Muhammad Ali had. Amazing man. I mean, you should have probably run for the White House. But yeah, so you were saying.
I was just asking you
Which was?
I was getting that you were saying people become homeless because they feel unworthy. feel unworthy?
Unworthy? No, 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 no. T.S. Eliot, you know him? Have you heard of him? He's like a playboy. T.S. Eliot once stated that an orange is an orange, and a cat is a cat, and a dog is a cat, dog. But human beings are in a very strange position in life. We have to go through so much to figure out an ounce of what makes us us. We are born confused, we live confused, and we die confused most often. If you know you're good at tennis, and if you love playing tennis, and if tennis is something that occupies and consumes you, it doesn't matter the sort of advertisement that lives in society. You are monogamous. You are devoted to tennis. Society has no power over you. If, on the other hand, you don't really like anything specifically, and you're open to all sorts of things, you know, it's like what they say about people going to Safeway. If you don't have a list, you'll probably spend $500. If you do have a list, you'll probably just spend $20. Most people don't have a list when they walk into life. And life is nothing but like a Costco. It creates desires. That's what life does. Now, if you were to live in Nepal, their movies can only create specific desires. There's certain things that the government will not allow movies to have. It's like if you watch this cartoon on TV that comes from Australia, Bluey. Have you watched Bluey? You should go home and watch Bluey. And it's a state-funded cartoon. And when you watch Bluey, you'll find something really amazing about that show. There are like 100 episodes. What is the function of a government? Well, Republicans are interesting. And it's something that George Carlin mentioned really, really well. You know, they're all pro-lifers. Once you come out, they say, whatever you want to do, fine. Well, how about healthcare? No, meritocracy. Well, how about housing? No, fuck you. You want to be homeless? That's fine. Whatever you want to do. But if you're pregnant, you just need to go through the pregnancy. And this thing needs to come out. Is the government there to protect this new life? No. Now, one of the things about government, at least what Australia, to some extent, does with these cartoons is, listen, we are responsible for the mental health of these young kids. Okay? What exactly do you want to expose these kids to? What do you want the parents to be exposed? Now, here's the thing you need to know about Bluey. Bluey is like the messiah of cartoons. Do you know what messiahs do? Messiahs make you feel like shit. Do you know who Angela Davis is? Angela Davis is one of the founders of Black Panther. She lives not too far from me. She walks with a dog once in a while. Sometimes we chat for a few... Sorry? Well, I don't know what exactly you mean by that, but do I see her? Like with my eyes, yes. Do we talk with my tongue and mouth? Yes. Does she come over the house once in a while? Once in a while. The problem with Angela Davis is that she has lived such an intellectual and such an active life that every time I see her, I feel as if my life amounts to nothing. So every time I see her from like 5 houses down, I run into my house. Not because I don't want to be around her, but I don't want to be around feeling guilty about how messed up my life is. And that's the function of Bluey, the cartoon. You have to see the parents. They have like the patience of Job, even though Job wasn't very patient in the Old Testament. I mean, these parents sacrifice 24/7 for their kids. And you should see the kids. They are amazing. So as a parent, you sit back and you're watching this cartoon. And me, I have no patience. I hate everything about my kids. I don't want to participate in anything that they do. I hate my wife. I hate my life. And so I look at this cartoon and say, man, I want to be like Chili. And I want to be like Bandit. I want to be a father just like that. That cartoon makes parents have a super ego. I want, as a father, to be a perfect dad, like Bandit. I want perfection. So every time I lose my patience, the cartoon makes me feel bad for the person that I am. Okay? Now the kids. The kids are free-spirited. They run around. They have a great time. They're best friends. I mean, talk about a cohesive environment. And you realize, well, that's the cartoon that those kids are exposed to. So when they get to be 18, Bluey doesn't say, Mom, I think I want to leave the house now and go out there and have my own apartment and figure out what life is all about. Why the hell would you want to leave your parents who happen to be your best friends and create the best environment for you, physically, psychologically, emotionally, intellectually? You know, why would you want to leave that? And so you realize that at the end of the day, human beings are nothing but tiny pieces of advertisement on the inside. Those ads create desires, create emotions, create experiences. You have a dog? I had a dog. What I didn't know when I first got a dog when I came to this country is that dogs need to be trained. If you have an untrained dog, you have an unhappy dog. Every time you bend over to pick up something from the floor, you get a bite. So you train your dog. Now that the dog is trained, you know, you're happy, the dog is happy, the dog knows exactly when he needs to shit, where he needs to go to eat, you know. Human beings are like that. Human beings are like dogs. They need to be trained. But in an environment where you have all these conflicting desires and there are no elders to guide you, what do you have? Well, you have all these desires inside you. They don't mesh well. You know, you have a good amount of frustration inside, a good amount of anger inside. You have zero discipline, zero patience. You're also free. You can do whatever. And before you know it, you're like me, 60. Anyone else before we go home? Yes, Monique? It's okay.
I mean, I agree that without a solid belief system, and most revolutionary states in society and all that stuff, and yeah, of course, billions of directions, right? I'm kind of a little lost on where that connected to what I asked you about.
But what you asked me had nothing to do with what I said. I never said the things you asked. You asked. I don't even know why you asked the things you asked. I don't even understand what you asked. What did you ask?
I asked if I had correctly understood what you said, that you thought the reason that people were homeless or had cancer was because they felt unworthy. But then when you talk about that.
No, you're a kid. You got lousy friends like Pinocchio. You go somewhere, you smoke, and before you know it, all the stuff is in the tobacco and you become addicted. You know, some things it takes like time for addiction to happen. Something like crack, it just happens right there. Something like Coke, you just die right there and then. You know, these days, if you're in the business of killing people, you have to create new customers. And you can't create a customer in an environment where there are like 50,000 desires out there, billboards, because you're going to lose them. I mean, look at the way you and I watch TV. Chips in this hand, remote in this hand. right? And every 5 seconds, you're changing the channel. So you have to create shows. Do you remember Dawson Creek? Any of you in this class? So this is a show like early 90s. First episode. In high school, a teacher is sleeping with this kid. And 10 years later, the director said, well, you know, when you're competing with all these TV shows, well, you need to grip people right there and then. You don't have like 5 hours or 10 hours to get people acclimated. So we gripped them the first 10 minutes. Here's a 30-year-old woman. Here's an 18-year-old student. They're sleeping, having sex. Wonderful to have a relationship. And now people are bitten. They're hooked. And the show was running for like 5-6 years. When you live in such a fierce and competitive environment, you don't allow people too much shelf life. It won't work. You have to blitz them to sell them things. And just in case someone gets into a relationship, you have to make sure that you always tell them there are always better options out there. My phone works perfect. Fucking AT&T sent me a message this morning. They're gonna sell me a brand new phone. A penny, for 1 penny. 1 penny. No changes to my plans. And I'm looking at my phone saying, oh, well, you know, it smells bad. I think I want to get this new phone. Now, I assure you, I've had this phone for 5 years. Never once did I think about changing my phone. But today, it's like on my mind. I can't even focus on this class. I want to like run to my office and like get like 5 of those 1 penny phones. The culture doesn't allow you to be content, to be happy. You always have to be miserable so you could be sold something. It's really fucked up. Find a Nepalese woman.
I think that dovetails well with the last lecture.
Which was?
The one on Marx and capitalism.
You know, they gave Socrates a way out. They told him, listen, just don't talk to people. And if you want to talk to people, just say hello to them, how are you? No philosophical conversations. That inspire them to live an examined life. And if you can do that, you know, go out there and have a good time with life. And hopefully you'll die a natural death and it'll be fine. But Socrates says, no, I want to go out there and like bully people, push people, ask them difficult questions, just to reveal to them how stupid they are. Hopefully when they realize that they're stupid, maybe they'll grow wings and fly. You know, maybe they'll become a Pegasus of sorts. Eventually, as you know, he was crucified. The problem with people like Marx,
Not literally.
yeah, he drank the hemlock and died. Yeah, he was crucified, yeah. The problem with bringing these ideas down here to life is that they ruin you. Consider the 7 different shades of love that come to us from Greek tradition. I'm sure you love your companion. Imagine if I was crude enough and vicious enough, wise enough, and had the proper language for you and I to go back and forth to examine the nature of your love for your companion. It wouldn't last. Your love wouldn't last. Because what the conversation will eventually do is that you would desire for a love that has elements of perfection in it. Because you can't love anyone without self-knowledge. You can't love anyone without understanding. And you can't have that particular love if you don't have a good teacher. You can certainly romanticize love, and it'll last for a few years and it'll fizzle out, which is okay. The problem, though, is if you were to bring that particular aspect down and apply it to your life wouldn't last. And then the question is it worth contaminating people? Not so much with ideas, because we're all junkies when it comes to that. You know, I have lots of friends who just know Karl Marx inside and out, or Jean-Jacques Rousseau, or Plato. But to apply the ideas to your life, and not as a young kid, because when you're young, you have nothing. You know, it's like the life story of the Buddha versus the monks right now. Well, you know, the Buddha had money. The Buddha had parents. The Buddha loved his parents. The Buddha had a community of people. He loved his people. The Buddha was also in a very powerful position in life. He was destined to be a prince. He was also married. He also had a kid. You know, when you're put in a monastery at the age of 2, well, you have nothing to lose. You got no parents, you got no money, you got no wife, you got no husband, you got no kid. What is it to give up? Nothing. You get brainwashed at the age of 2. And then you kind of come out and you become the Dalai Lama. He's good, don't get me wrong. Okay? But then you have someone who has a life, but comes to understand that that life is not enough. They want something more. The problem now is that, well, how do you give up the things you have? How do you walk away from your parents? That requires understanding. That requires will. You know, how do you give up money? How do you give up a wife? Talk about 3,000 years ago, not today. You know, in a culture that doesn't allow you to divorce and walk away from your family. How do you walk away from your kid? How do you walk away from like being a prince or a king? And then what happens to you? You become religious. You have experiences. And you say, you know what? I don't care for those experiences. You give those up too. I mean, that's what Socrates demands. That's what Karl Marx demands, that you live a minimalist life. You know. Anyways. Yeah. Love this.
I think that people should be single. I feel like,
Oh no.
or are there any, what, I guess you kind of maybe disapprove of everybody's relationship in this class.
Oh no, me? No. I like the fact that you guys have sex.
I guess I'm just wondering, like, what would it take for one of us to be in a relationship that you approved of?
Well, first of all, I'm nobody to approve or disapprove anything. That's the first thing. Yeah. Do you have a plot of land? Do you want a plot of land on which you can build a house? Just say yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Was not difficult. And let's just say your dad gives you, your mom gives you like $1 million, and it's a gorgeous piece of land that overlooks the paradise. And you want to build a house. The first thing that's going to happen is someone is going to come and examine the soil. How deep do you need to dig to reach a solid ground? Because sometimes you have to dig about 20 feet, sometimes 10 feet, sometimes 2 feet. But why do you have to understand whether or not the soil is hard enough?
Foundation for
Yes. That also depends if you want to build a 1-story, a 2-story, or 3-story. If it's going to be wood or if it's going to be concrete. Because different platforms can only carry certain load, right? So you want to build a life. You want to build a house with someone. Okay. You're building it on what exactly? Now, the way we usually form relationship, there is nothing wrong with it. There's you look at someone and you have feelings. And we are initially guided by those feelings. You know, we don't say, well, I wonder who her parents are. No, we don't think that way. That's not the way this culture works. And these days, that's not the way any culture works. Okay? There's a reason why he says, I want to go back and find someone from Nepal or Nepalese woman because it's part of my culture. Why? There is something about that culture that glues people together, even if they don't want to be glued. Now, this, by the way, does not mean that you need to go home and break up. Okay. Every culture creates its own set of narratives, and those narratives create relationships. In other words, it's something I was telling my class period before. If you are my wife, and he is our guest, and we are part of the Inuit culture, the Eskimo culture, okay, you will go to the second floor, knock on his door, and say, Justin, I know you're home alone. If you want me, I can lay next to you tonight. Because that is part of our psychological culture, I won't feel angry. I won't feel envy. I won't feel jealousy. Here you do it, you'll end up in prison because you've killed your wife. So emotions, even emotions that you have, are culturally generated. Okay? Now, let's say you and I want to be in a relationship. First, the thing that happens is the instinctual aspect of what it means to be us. I look at you over there, you look at me, and our eyes meet. I don't know why I'm attracted to you. All I know is that I'm attracted to you. You've never passed by somewhere, and all of a sudden there is this fragrance. See, where is it coming from? It's a feeling. You look at someone and say, oh, why am I feeling that? You just feel it. And then the next step is you slowly walk towards the person. And when you walk to the person, you don't ask, hi, your parents. Did you go to school? Do you have money? Are you fucked up in the head? What's wrong with you? No. So, what's your name? And what happens in wasting time like that is you create stories. I mean, that's one of the nice things about being young. You waste time. And in wasting time, you create stories. Now, some of those stories make you more messed up. Some of those stories make you a bit more healthy. Okay, it depends on the environment. As you and I waste time getting to know the superficial parts of you and me, what happens when you and I spend time together? Well, shit, you spend time with a dog, you grow attached to the dog. Right? So you and I spend time. You go home, you think about me. I go home, I think about you. Now, what's the next step? Well, there comes a point where it's no longer enough for me to look at you. I need to hold your hand. And what happens when we are now physically involved? Well, we are glued. Okay? We have now stories that connect us even tighter, deeper. But I've never really hired an engineer to see how deep you go or how deep I go. You know, I don't know if you're solid rock or just sand. All I know is that I like you, you like me, and we are stupid enough to say, I love you, and you say, you love me. Fine? Okay? Now we become roommates. Now, in relationships, one person is always going to be dominating, the other is going to be more submissive. No two people love the same. There's always going to be inequality. Always. There's always a hierarchy. Now, we haven't even gotten to the elements of boredom. That you and I, as the sort of animals that we are, we go into things, we suck the life out of it. You like a song by Miley Cyrus, you listen to it 50 times. That's what we do. The 51st time, it does nothing for us. Now, am I suggesting that people go that deep to figure out who they are, what they want? Of course not. No one is capable of. And time changes all of us. And as time changes you, your perspective about yourself, your relationship, what you want, what you demand, very, very different. Have you guys heard of Jean-Paul Sartre? He was German.
You say German?
Was he not? There you go. Good job. Now, he had a companion whose name was Beaver. Simone de Beauvoir, he used to call her Beaver. Jesus Christ.
Apparently he got around.
A couple of things about Sartre you should know. It's kind of like Freud. Whenever I talk about Freud, people say, oh yeah, he was a coke addict. Not true. Jean-Paul Sartre. So let's talk about that particular thing that you just said, because it demands clarity. I don't like when people say bad things about my friends. Carmen, UCLA. I'll come visit you. Jean-Paul Sartre hated sex.
That seems so used to me.
Well, let me explain. He likened penetrative sex as castration. Like your genitalia as a man enters a woman's private, and it's like your penis gets cut off. For him, it was a threatening thing. For him, sex and sensuality were two very, very different things. They belong to two very, very different realms. You don't need understanding in sex. You don't even need sensuality in sex. Oftentimes, because of the way human beings are wired, sex is one of domination. Sex is fleshy. Sex is meaty. Sex is violence. Coming to realize that Jean-Paul Sartre did not enjoy the bedroom too much, Simone de Beauvoir and Jean-Paul Sartre sat in the kitchen one night. And they came to an agreement. They will be in open relationships. Simone de Beauvoir will have her own partners, and Jean-Paul Sartre will have his own. But there is one thing they both need to promise each other, and that was they need to be transparent. That if I was to ask you, how was A, B, C, D, you're going to say everything. Now, one of the things you need to understand about open relationships, especially when two people love each other, sometimes you can have sex without two people loving each other. Just have sex because they're just stupid. Okay? Maybe they want to release some tension. Maybe they're just bored, silly, and it's fun. Don't get me wrong. Okay? Just to make sure that the emotions that jealousy create doesn't overpower you and burden you to the point that the relationship becomes, it just fragments and falls into pieces. And we're talking about a relationship that lasted for decades. What Jean-Paul Sartre wanted was not sex, but sensuality. And let me explain what that means. You and I are going to sit. In having sex with you, I don't need to see your face. It's an analogy, just stay with it. I don't need to talk to you. I have no desire to get to know you. I don't need to be exercise patience. My job is to have an orgasm, take a shower, and go home. In sensuality, on the other hand, you and I will sit. Our hands will touch. I will gaze into your eyes as you will gaze into mine. I will feel your body. But you have to let me feel your body. I have to respect it. I have to worship it. That is what Jean-Paul Sartre wanted. The ability to worship another human being. And you can't do that through the act of sex. I'm not talking about these moments where you fall in love and magic happens, where your body, mind, and emotions, like the Trinity, your Trinity and my Trinity, now we unite, and now there is magic. I'm not talking about those fleeting 2 weeks of what we call love. Go ahead. Eli.
How did you feel about Freud's thoughts on
Death of a Salesman. What was his name? Chucky or Chuck or something? He loves his dad. I mean, he loves his dad. He loves his mom too, but he has this beautiful relationship with his father. They go on a business trip, and they're staying at this hotel. Chuck, this kid, goes out to grab himself a cup of coffee from Pete's, and just opens the door, goes into his room where his father is, and sees his father with a woman. He's devastated, but more importantly, the father is devastated because his image that was up here for his son descends and falls from grace to the point he's not able to recover. He suicides, kills himself, so that his family can get the insurance money. Sigmund Freud, and he is another one of those, like the Michael Jordan of the intellectual world, is one of those freaks of nature. He had a brother named Michael. Are you the firstborn? You're no good. Now, one of the things that happens with your first child is that you're new parents, and this is your first child, and you're going to live out this fantasy. I'm going to take my kid to the park. I'll be patient. I'll be the best dad, the best mom, or whatever. And then little by little, life, of course, slaps you left and right. You realize that, raising kids is tough. But you have 110% of your parents' attention, energy, focus, and all that. When the second one is born, you realize that you're crying. You're the firstborn. You're crying, but your parents say, "Shut up! Can't you see? I'm changing the kid's diaper." So, oh, wait a minute. For the past 2 years, every time I go peep, my parents run to me. Now I scream. Nothing. Freud was the first child. He comes to realize that his brother Michael has taken over. His parents no longer give him the attention that he used to get. So he sits and prays for his brother's death. And his brother does in fact die. He got sick and died. Something Freud never gave him, recovered from to some extent. And from that point on, he wanted to understand why people are the way they are. If you look at our lives, we're distracted in so many different ways. We do all sorts of things. We have so many things on our plates. Freud, from the age 11, he was focused. He wanted to understand what makes people tick. And he began working with psychologists from the age 14. Okay? So that itself should tell you something about the character and nature of Sigmund Freud. One of the things you need to understand is you're not going to get a Karl Marx around the 14th century. And you're not going to get a Sigmund Freud in the 10th century because the culture is different. Because society now has elements that it didn't. By the time Freud comes into the scene, You no longer have farm countries. You have factories everywhere. You have big cities. The religious ideas that human beings have the kingdom of God within, it's been debunked. World War I. Do you know what happens to you when you just go out there and kill people? World War II. He didn't live to see the full blossoming of World War II, but he saw Nazis coming to power. His father was a Jew. And even though Freud had said a lot of nasty things about religion, he raised his kids being Jews, making sure they know all the Jewish rituals and ceremonies. Freud worked in mainly just mental institutes. Him and his community of people, he experimented with cocaine at the age of 15. And him and a lot of other people imagined that this is going to be the magic drug. It's like the Messiah that's going to heal people. Only to realize, first of all, it's temporary. Second of all, it's highly addictive. That messes up you even more, you know. So he walked away from that. What happens when you find that your father has been cheating on your mom? You put marriage vows under question. You begin to question your own emotions as to why you loved your father. How could you love such a man? Is your father really honest, or is he like a deceptive, lying piece of something? When World War I and II happened, Freud began to question human dignity, human decency, human nature. If the kingdom of God lives inside us, if we are rational beings, why do we get ourselves involved in such a mess? Must be a reason. Maybe deep down we are not decent. Maybe deep down we are not compassionate. Maybe deep down we are in fact quite violent. If I was to kind of go back to, what's his name? Jean-Paul Sartre. Forgive me for saying this. Next time you guys have sex, pay attention. And you realize in sex, rarely do we respect our companion. A means to an end. And if you pay close attention, you may even realize there are hints of violence in the act of sex. So instead of using technical language that Freud used, there's a part of you that is just raw. Like you wake up from an afternoon nap and just feel like shit. You don't know why. All you know is that nothing feels right. There's a part of you that demands perfection. And then there is this you in the middle. Do you make the sacrifices go towards perfection? Do you stay in school? School is tough. Busy work, ridiculous instructors. 4 years. Or do you listen to this other part of you? Go with your friends, drop on out, smoke, party, have sex. And then you're in the middle. And we're not the sort of animals that enjoy sacrifice very much, especially for things we don't really like. So we usually gravitate towards the raw part of what we are. And it makes perfect sense. You know what ICE does, right? And do you know that in Texas there is a center where they train people to become ICE? Now, let's say, I'll give you a different example. I went to Costco a few years ago. We used to make sandwiches on campus for students. They had these big boxes of tomatoes, usually about 6 tomatoes in a box. Saying, you know what? I'm just going to put like an extra tomato in there. Who's it going to hurt? No. So I go to check it out, and the woman looks at me and says, there's an extra tomato here. So what do you care? Just let me pay for it. It's supposed to be 6, you have 7. What do you care? So where are you from, I ask her. Guatemala. Okay. 7 is good, just leave it there. No, 6. Do you know what needs to happen to you for you to forget poverty? That you work for a factory that owns you, and they're so clever, where they make a basketball court for you, they give you a kitchen, a place to shower, they make you feel as if this is your home, and you will do whatever you can to protect it. It is true that they give you $30. It is true that they give you health care. But look what you're doing. It's a fucking tomato. Let it go. What you have is false consciousness. There is a part of us that we don't want to admit that you're using another human being so you could be out of loneliness. So you create all this ridiculous jargons. I love them. Go to a fancy restaurant. Ask for like a Caesar salad. They give you one fucking piece of lettuce. One! Some juice on the side, like they paint as if it's their Picasso. And some tiny cheese on the side too. How much? $25. I look at my wife and I say, you brought me to this fucking place for what? I could have bought like 50 heads of lettuce for like $10. But that's what we do. We don't like life the way it is. You want to have sex, just have it. But no, it has to be with love. It's violent. No, add compassion to it. Freud is perhaps very much like Karl Marx. You know, he gets rid of all these false glossy aspect of life because there is no glossiness in life. Life from the moment you're born to the time you die is just struggle. It's just struggle. You have to overcome your basic needs and camouflage them in a language that's foreign to you. They create superego. You know why I got married, right? Because I used to read this poet, Greek, Pindar. Getting old sucks. Getting old alone even sucks more. Being old, being alone, and being sick, that's a tragedy. You know why I had kids? One day I looked at my wife and I felt nothing. So when someone asks me, do you love me? What am I going to say? Of course I'm going to say yes. Am I going to say, well, I love you because I'm no longer alone? You help me not to sit alone and watch a movie by myself, feeling pathetic and miserable? No. So we lie about life by creating a language that belongs to superego. And there is nothing wrong with that, by the way. I'm not demonizing that at all. I'm saying that Freud was quite honest. When he came to America to give lectures about therapy and all that. Of course, he also didn't like people very much. He writes to his friends saying that American women are so attractive, they're beautiful. I want to have sex with all of them. Then, like Kruna, he has a dream where he's having sex with prostitutes. Then he wakes up and he writes, to his friend, my dream told me this beautiful message. American women are like prostitutes. I don't want to have sex with them anymore. Beautiful message. Many of you do drugs? Marijuana? Excellent. Freud did drugs, but he did it because he had cancer. And the pain was too much. You don't smoke marijuana because you know anything about the culture of the peyote or the plant. You don't look at these things and as plant teachers. You don't have an elder that teaches you about the roots of these plants. You have no respect for the native culture or the plants. It's just a casual culture. Everybody does it. So you do it. It's what Freud called sublimation. First, you're an addict, not in a bad way. You're just in the habit of, like me drinking coffee, you just smoke weed. Sublimation. We do all sorts of crazy things to survive life. And most of it is stupid. Time is it? We have 2 minutes. Anyone else? Come on, 2 minutes. I'm teaching. For those of you who are bored, silly, instead of smoking, you can take my religion class. 6 to 9 in this room. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. It's actually quite good.
What's the class again?
Humanities 40, World Religions. Yeah, I've been teaching that class here at Laney for 20 years now. 20. Well, the class is in the evening. There is something very special about nighttime and its impact on just us human beings. And there is something about the class itself, ideas. So, yeah. Like during daytime?
No.
Yeah, it'll be like this. It's a hybrid. We meet once a week. It's a short second week of the semester. It's not going to fill up, probably get canceled. I did that on purpose. Monique, anything? You sure? Yeah.
I mean, I kind of wanted to get into private property a little bit, but I don't know if we really have time for that. But you touched on it a little bit about private property, and I don't know how it is a very dividing factor. And just like you said, like the example with someone at the grocery store, and the concept of like this perfect society, perfect world that we live in, where everyone has to follow the rules, but those rules are created to protect private property and the interests of corporations over people. So it's like, why should we follow those rules if they don't necessarily benefit us?
I had a student some years who asked about why do we need to have money? My response to the question was, well, don't pursue money and see what happens to your rent. Your question is really good, but because I don't really move towards theory too much, it doesn't interest me. All I can tell you is the following. You can be young and you could rail against private property, about the corporate world, the way I did when I was young. What I see is that rents keep going higher, houses becoming more expensive, interest rates are going higher. There's a good chance that you guys in this class will never be able to own a house. It's just way too much. I mean, first you need to have a down payment of at least $250,000 if you want to live in the Bay Area, which is nearly impossible because you can't even make $700 to pay rent, right? So you'll be owned by your landlords and you'll be evicted. And one of the things you'll understand about life is that you and I are desperate for stability. I don't want to be in a relationship always walking on eggshells. I don't want money to be a concern. I don't want to pack up every goddamn minute to move my family around. It's not fun to always be expelled from one place to move to another. It's not fun. And it's also not fun paying 30-year mortgage. Life isn't fun. I mean, if you look at the life of Karl Marx, he lived a miserable life. They always had to move. They never had any money. It's only near the end, the last 2 years, where Engels, he had some extra cash, gave it to him, and he lived a relatively good, happy